So we've been talking a lot about legacy. Do you think most people wait too long to start thinking about the legacy they want to leave?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And when we think about what legacy means, most people instantly go to, well, I have an estate plan done. And what that means is they've gone back and sat down with an attorney or a professional and said, this is what I want to have happen with my money when I'm no longer here. That's great that I have an estate plan done, but what can I do today that's going to leave a meaningful legacy behind that maybe I can really be intentional about and, if possible, live to see? So what that means is maybe outlining what's important to you, and maybe that's talking to your beneficiaries about what you want to have done with your money. Maybe that's going on a family vacation and creating a meaningful memory. And that's basically what happened in my life. Is my father, I still don't know if this is a true statement or not, but shortly after he was diagnosed with cancer, I don't think he told anybody, and all of a sudden planned a big family vacation to Disney World. He wanted to spend his money and what he had, and those last few memories for us as a family, taking 25 people to Disney for 3 days. Now, as one of his kids, did I think he was out of his mind? As his financial advisor, did I think he was crazy for doing this? Absolutely. But to my father, that was his legacy. He wanted to be remembered as that fun, entertaining grandfather or father to us. So he was really intentional about that legacy that he wanted to leave for us. So legacy and planning for a legacy is more than just, I've done an estate plan. So a lot of what we've started talking about recently is, that's great that you have an estate plan done, but I've made the statement is, wouldn't you rather talk to your beneficiaries about your wishes and start living that legacy now if you can do that and can afford to do that?
What do you think most people get wrong about planning for a legacy, or creates the most hesitation when it comes to planning for their legacy?
Yeah, there's this generation that I think is really secretive. And what I mean by that is, and again, this goes to my own parents. They don't want anyone to know how much money they have. They don't want to let anyone know about what their health is until it's too late. So I think the biggest mistake that people make is trying to keep it a big secret. We shouldn't be keeping secrets about what we want to have done with the finances that we've planned for or saved for. That should be an open conversation with our beneficiaries. Now, we can get into the side of it where there's tax planning that can be done. There's ways that we want to pass on money that's more efficient for the next generation. But I think there is a mistake happening in our industry, in the financial service industry, that lets people get away with keeping it a giant secret on who's going to inherit what in their life. I always like the idea and talk about, wouldn't you rather tell your beneficiaries what you want to have done versus reading about it on a document? So I think the mistake is they're not being forthcoming with their own personal wishes.
For me, when I think about it, I feel like there's a educational gap too, where this generation has accumulated so much wealth or been successful, and there's a huge opportunity to pass along that knowledge of what they did with the money.
Yeah.
So not only do they get to tell them about their wishes, but maybe they get to make that introduction of how they became so successful, maybe the mistakes along the way. So that way, at the time when they come into this inheritance, they're not tripping over themselves, making the same mistakes in the future.
Yeah, so what you're saying is to say that, hey, I've worked with Beck Bode for a long time. they've actually done really well by me. We want you to continue working with Beck Bode, but you're right. I think what gets stressful for people is either changing advisors or not knowing where to start. So to have that warm introduction of, hey, I've worked with this team and this group for a number of years, we want that to continue. That's part of leaving a legacy is, I've already got something set up for you. And let me introduce them to you now so that you have a relationship with them. I think you nailed it. I think that's something that's skipped as well or missed out on, is passing on those relationships that have been developed for an extremely long time. And for some of our clients now, we're coming up on 20 years working together. So there is a real personal relationship there. So when you think about for you and leaving a legacy, is there anything you personally want out of your legacy? I know that we're kind of young. We were just talking about our kids here a few minutes ago. What do you want your legacy to be?
You know, my wife and I have talked about this a little bit, but the truth is that we haven't thought about it enough, even
Yeah.
as a professional in the field. What I want to do is I want to leave my kids a better life than I
Yeah.
had. So what does that look like today? Probably some independence and freedom financially.
Yep.
Maybe there's no debt when it comes to college, but I want to be part of their goals, their dreams as they get older, and being able to help and fund those in a way that makes their lives easier in the future. So
Yeah.
I think it's something my wife and I have to revisit as we get older, as our
Yeah.
kids get older. What do we want to support for them? And where's our lives look? Because while we want to live comfortably in retirement, we do want to make sure we leave enough behind to make the generations to come just as happy as we
Yeah.
were.
And my kids are a few years older than yours. I know my oldest now is in college, and I get the question a lot of, well, won't you want your kids to take over your business? And I've thought a lot about that, and I was like, yeah, I would love for my kids to be involved in the business if they were interested in it. So part of what my legacy isn't necessarily saying that, oh, I want my son or my daughter or my boys to take over Beck Bode. I always think about the idea of finding something that they're passionate about and investing in them and into their future. So yes, I agree 100% with you, Vinny, that I'm trying to leave a meaningful legacy for not just financially, but getting my kids right now interested in something that they can be truly passionate about, similar to what I am with Beck Bode. And on top of that, my wife and I are really involved with a couple of nonprofits that we want to be remembered that, hey, we've tried to make a difference in this world. More than just we had a successful business, well, we had an impact on something other than what we do here at Beck Bode. So again, I would agree that maybe at our age, mid-40s,
Late
for one of
30s.
us, thinking already about what do we want our legacy to be can seem like, oh, that's a little premature. But I would say it's not, because I think planning for your legacy can be done. Like you can actually start thinking about steps on, okay, part of what I want to do is have my financial future secure. I want to make sure that's done. And once that is created, how do I want to be remembered in this world? What are some of the things I can do today that I can make a difference? Similar to what we've done with the golf event, that was an event where we raised money for 2 nonprofits. That's something that Beck Bode is part of. So it's never too early to start thinking about what you want your legacy to be, especially when you're planning for life events like retirement.
Which is such a good point too, because while it's never too early, it's never too late to make adjustments along the way. So many people say, I have that estate plan, and they don't review it enough.
Right.
And life goes on and changes too. So it's important to continue to evolve that and have these discussions, which sometimes is the most intimidating part for people, to bring and be as vulnerable, maybe with an advisor or in front of their beneficiaries, and tell them and have an open conversation. But I think that's where we provide a ton of value, is to be able to facilitate that for a lot of our families.
Yeah, most people think coming to meet with a financial advisor is just planning for retirement. But I think at this stage in the game, for us, it's more important to think about, we're going to get to retirement, then what? It's not the end game once we know what number you need to retire on. The reality is, I think it's just the beginning of planning for, okay, you're there, you're going to get there, then what are we going to do as your legacy? And that just continues the conversation for us.
So many people then make investment decisions based on a number, and they're like, well, we did it, we got there, now we can go conservative, whatever that means to you. But the truth is that if you're planning a legacy and you're trying to leave meaningful assets or generational wealth, that affects your investment decisions. And you really have an opportunity to impact those future generations even more so by not making emotional decisions when you hit a certain age because you reached a number and it's over. But instead, what else can be done for the next, you hit 65, 70, 20 plus years? So what's the first step when it comes to legacy planning?
Yeah, Vinny, that's a really good question. And what you're really asking me is, where does that journey begin for our clients, right? At the end of the day, all of our clients go through a process that we call a goals planning statement. And what that statement does is, yes, it gives us a number of how much money someone needs to save in order to achieve their retirement, but it's also going to explain and have a conversation about what we expect to happen over the years. Our goal for our clients is to accumulate enough wealth that there's going to be enough to pass on to the next generation. So where do we begin with starting that legacy plan? Starts with a goals planning statement, making sure that someone can afford to retire in a meaningful way, and then it's understanding what are their goals for their money. What do they want to have happen once their retirement number is reached? And that's, for me, that's where the conversation gets really, really interesting.
Sure. So, because a lot of people look at it as, well, I've got to my retirement age, I hit the number that Jim and the team said I have to hit. Right. Now I scale back, right?
Yeah.
And now I cool it down, and whatever's left is left, but I get to retire.
Yeah, it's I've hit my number, I'm on cruise control. Mm-hmm. And there's really nothing in investing, there's nothing in life that necessarily gets on cruise control. I often make the statement that your investing timeline never ends, right? You're going to be investing until the end of life. Mm-hmm. And we're at a point now with many of our clients that we've done some really good planning for. We've put them in a really good financial position. They've listened to us. They've taken advice really well. Now we're talking to them about, well, how do you want to be remembered? What are some of the things that you can do today that you're going to be super proud of that you've made decisions for your family or for your beneficiaries? And we have a lot of clients that are making meaningful decisions. And what might not seem like a big deal to one client is going to be really important to another. Like, we have grandparents that are being really intentional about, I want to pay for my grandchildren's education. Mm-hmm. Whether that's private school or college, we're now saying that you can afford to retire. Check that off the box. What else do you want to do? Well, I want to plan for my kids' education, my grandkids' education, and pay for that. Or I want to make meaningful donations to specific charities that we were involved in, and start seeing that money used that might be in excess of what they need for their financial plan to meet their retirement goals. So a lot of planning is going into what they want to achieve in life, and then how they want to see their estate being used while they're living, as well as passing it on to their beneficiaries. Part of those conversations also get into meeting with the beneficiaries and being very specific of what the goals are. And I'm going to throw this question back at you. Why do you think that's important? Why do you think it's important to say, let's sit down and have a conversation with the beneficiaries?
So I think it's important because I think it brings out the beneficiaries' goals for their own future and how they're already starting their planning journey. And we know this as a fact is the earlier you start, regardless of the size of the account or regardless of your income, putting money away into your 401k, IRA, or a brokerage account is going to compound over time. And the best thing in your investment journey is time.
Yeah.
So for your parents, your grandparents, whomever, to bring you into the fold at such an early age, to, again, learn from what they've gone through over the last 40 plus years, to get you in front of a professional, to have these meaningful conversations, how small they may seem, time goes by. And before you know it, you're 40, you're 60, and you'd wish you knew what you knew now, back then. So I think that you're giving your beneficiaries a tremendous advantage by bringing them to the table and having an open discussion.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, is you're now passing on knowledge to your beneficiaries, right? This is what we've done to become successful. We've met with the team at Beck Bode. They've put us in this great financial situation, from doing the right types of planning to doing the right types of investing. And we want you, meaning the next generation or the beneficiaries, to experience the same thing. And I think that's a perfect way to start those conversations with the beneficiaries. And then taking it more on the, we'll call it the emotional side, I think it's really important for our clients, when they're comfortable, to share maybe what their estate plan even says, or what their goals are for their money when they're no longer there. And the conversations when I'm sitting in meetings with a client and the beneficiaries, and many times it's another family member or a child's, are actually really emotional conversations. Because now you're talking about, I've created all of this wealth, or I've saved all of this money. You're looking at those beneficiaries and saying, this is how I want that money to be used. And for the clients that go through that process, I think it's really empowering because there's a sense of comfort knowing that they told them what they wanted. And again, versus what traditionally happens is you read about it from what's been written in an estate plan. So they've now made this emotional connection with their beneficiaries about this is how I want my legacy to be left.
What a great, again, educational tool, though, for that next generation to then pass on to the following generation, right? They're being taught something, wow, my parents, my grandparents did this for me. That's going to stick with them.
Yeah.
And when they see the impact over that over time, and when they become their parents' age and they're in the retirement, they're going to be wanting to hand that to that next generation preceding them, or the charities or whatnot, whatever their legacy means to them at that time.
Yeah, not everybody's ready to have this conversation.
No.
Not everybody wants to sit down with a beneficiary and say, hey, this is how much money I have. And you don't have to be that direct. It's not about, hey, I've accumulated this much wealth. It's more about whatever wealth I pass on to you, this is what I want to have done. So it shouldn't be this threatening exposure of, I don't want to give my kids or my grandkids or my family member or friends too much information. It's not about that. It's really about, this is how I want it spent, this is how I want it used, these are my intentions on passing it on to you, which is really powerful.
So somebody's listened, they've heard a really good amount of points that have come out today. What's the next step, or where should someone go if they said, you know what, this kind of resonates with me, or I want to bring my family in?
Yeah.
What's the next steps?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways that we've been doing this. It's part of the conversations now in every one of our annual reviews when we're sitting down with clients. The problem is your client's annual review might not be for 6 or 7 months, right? And that's reaching out to our team and sitting down and saying, hey, I need to go through this process. I want to make sure that my next generation or my beneficiaries verbally hear my wishes, or I set up a path to make that happen. And it's something that our staff, you or me, is more a facilitator in the conversation than someone that's telling them exactly what they have to say, and really encouraging them to be open and honest about what their wishes are. And having that conversation now, sooner than later, is in, I think, everybody's best interest.
So when do we get back on the golf course?
Legacy Cup 2026, it's coming your way.
Planning begins now?